Have you ever wondered why many African American families would hide or lock down a mentally challenged family member? Can you remember being told that an auntie or a neighbor had a nervous breakdown? Can you recall that uncle that continued to be drunk at every holiday occasion? If you said yes to any of these questions, please stay tuned to learn more on Home Again TV as we dig deeper into the history of mental illness in the African American community.
Today's episode of Home Again is brought to you by Marlon Gary Funeral Homes, the Chapel of Peace. Log on to thechapelofpeace.com today for services and packages to meet your family's needs.
I'm standing in front of what would have been known as the Lunatic Asylum for the Insane, built in 1838. Its location appears to be where the Department of Health is today on Parsons Avenue. In 1868, a fire destroyed this building, but it was later rebuilt on the hilltop of Columbus. During the first few decades of Ohio statehood, there was no facilities for the mentally ill. Many were confined to local jails or penitentiaries. African Americans managed their own mentally challenged friends and relatives. Today we will sit down and speak with our mental health experts, Tara Rigsby, Lynette David, and Nolita Berger, as they will share tips and resources on what tools are available to help the 614 community. So they just saw that history clip, right? Hello, everyone. Interesting topic today, right? We are talking about African Americans and mental health. We will touch base on the history of local African Americans as well as national. We will recognize individuals as well as doctors who made an impact in the conversation. There's a fly in here that is driving us all absolutely nuts. It is November, and we have a fly that just keeps messing with us up in here as we are filming. So apologize if you see a slide. We are excited today because we have several players in the house that are experts in the field of mental health. As I mentioned in my post earlier, we try to identify the best resources to share their story, but also share why it is important for African Americans to understand what mental health is, why mental health has made an impact in our community, and what resources are available in the future that we can use for mental health. And I have here one of the better advocates, one of the people who started the conversation here to me in the 614, which is Tara Rigsby.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I always enjoy sitting down with you. You're so authentic to the conversation.
Thank you.
Tell them a little bit. Now, I already know you because we're friends.
Right.
But tell them a little bit about why it is that you qualify to talk about mental health.
Well, I qualified because I have lived experience. I am diagnosed with major depression and anxiety. I live with it every day. I fight it every day. And I also have stepped out to make sure that other people know that it's okay to get help. You know, explain what depression is. I explain what I go through, and I try to give stories on my Facebook page of just stuff that I go through during the year, you know, from my ups and my downs, just so they're not seeing my ups.
And that's what I like about you, because what it seems like what you've done is you've made mental health real. Because it always, to me, was a stigma that we thought of, and we'll talk a little bit about my uncle who was mentally retarded, which I know there's new names for it, but we're just talking about, I'm being authentic about what we used to call it.
Correct.
But we'll talk about those differences, because when I was younger, a person like you didn't look mentally ill.
No.
And I think those are the stigmas that our community needs to better understand.
Right, and that's my biggest, that's what I talk about the most, is I'm trying to break down those walls of stigma, you know, because there is so much of that. I grew up with it, you know, I wasn't even allowed to be sad. Didn't know what was going on, but that wasn't something you talked about. It was looked bad upon, especially being in the church the way that it was. So it was a lot of hiding.
Well, you were supposed to just give it to the Lord and
Right.
keep it moving.
Right.
But the Lord gave us resources,
Give
right?
us resources. I believe that the Lord gives us gifts. We give
Mhm.
other people gifts. My gift is not to be a doctor, but He gave that person a gift for a reason. And we do have to help ourselves. You know, so.
Well, I have to talk about this before we talk about the holidays,
Okay.
because historically, amongst African Americans, we've been challenged with what is mental illness because of the lack of resources that we didn't have. A lot of times, if someone was mentally ill in, let's say, the 1800s, they had to stay at home because the recourse was either jail or penitentiary.
Right.
And then we talk about do you remember the uncles that were sometimes hidden in rooms upstairs?
Yes. I myself was locked in a room.
Now let's talk
Yeah.
about that. So why is it, do you think we have that type of reaction to mental illness?
Because in our community that's not what, it didn't exist. You know, it was a demon, you had bad spirits. So for me, I grew up in a Christian home, and no offense to my grandmother, she was great, but that's just how she grew up. So it was an anointing oil, and the first time that I tried to commit suicide, that was just, so I got locked in a room. I didn't go to a hospital to get help or to figure out what was going on, or nobody asked me, like, why did you do that? What are you feeling? It was basically like I had a bad spirit, and so it had to be prayed away. So that's where and I was 15 then, so that's when I learned to hide it, because I didn't want to be locked up, I didn't want to be judged, I didn't want everybody in the church knowing, you know, that I had this evil spirit, as they used to call it, but it's not that at all.
Yeah,
There's nothing evil about me, I don't think.
Well, there isn't. It's just another form of sickness.
Right.
And we have learned, but to our credit, we haven't been given the resources to better understand it.
Yeah.
So I always talk about my Uncle Glenn, who was mentally retarded. And I tell this story, and I'm sad about it when I have to tell it, because I grew up with it, like a brother almost, but he was an uncle. But we did not understand who he was, and we didn't treat him properly. We weren't raised to understand mentally challenged, like they will never get better. I remember, and y'all hear me talk about my grandma, she is my hero. But we also have to recognize that she didn't always have the right tools to know, and we did a lot of aggressive things to him. We tried to punish him, and we did things that I think we thought, well, if we did this to him, he'll get better. But he never got better, and we just, so I hate to have that conversation, because it makes it appear as if we were almost abusive people. But to be honest, we sort of were.
You were, or back then people were. I felt like I was abused in that way emotionally. But I also had to understand, eventually they didn't have the education. People didn't talk about it. It was almost like, back in the day, cancer was just the C word. Now everybody's talking about cancer and being very open with it. How to get help, how to do early detection and all of that. So I think it's coming out more, but I still, just being in the community and out there advocating for mental health, I still see in the African American community where people are still shied away from talking about it, or even saying that they feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's still some insecurities of being judged. I don't know if there's some good resources that makes people trust the process, because again, those people are there and they may feel judged. And I think more importantly, what we have to talk about is the holiday season seems to create some synergy that isn't always positive as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, this season brings out a lot of SAD, seasonal affective disorder. It goes around, everyone doesn't have a family, or like for me, I can give an example of myself. Christmas time is really hard for me because December I lost my grandmother and my dad. So I go into this grief process of me not wanting to celebrate Christmas, which isolates me, which in turn makes me, stay in darkness.
So does the body recognize that this time period is familiar?
Yes. So my body, like I can feel myself going into isolation. For example, my family knows that when they see my closet getting messed up, there's something going on. And it has happened here recently where my closet I was literally coming home, taking my clothes off, throwing them in there, washing them, throwing them in there. Anything that I had, like I would take a business trip or something like that, have my little suitcase, just throw it in there. So that's a sign that something's going on. Sleeping, a lot of sleeping, especially when it's starting to get dark outside. As it gets closer to the holidays, I cry more, so you can see yourself being more emotional, more sensitive, probably a little irritated as well, probably more irritated toward your family because they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. So those are, and you can feel your body just being exhausted. It's more of an exhaustion, a tiredness, and you just don't have the energy to do anything besides what you have to do.
So I think people, when they have those symptoms, they don't even know that they're challenged. Is that some form of depression?
It is some form of depression.
So say those criteria again, or those characteristics.
Yeah, sure. So
sleeping
a lot, loss of interest. Your body, you're just exhausted, so you can go to work from 8 to 5 and all you can do is come home and go to bed.
You're disorganized?
Very disorganized in your thinking and in your home. So usually it starts with the space that you really live in, which is your bedroom.
So
yeah.
Can we equate sometimes depression with chaos in your space?
Yes, because when I can speak for myself, and other people that I've worked with that have depression, you have chaos in your head. So the chaos is showing in your space because you're fighting everything inside your head. You're fighting to make it through the day. You're fighting to be nice. You're fighting to not show people what's going on with you, especially if you work in a corporate world. You don't want everybody to say, oh, what's wrong? Because they really aren't going to understand anyway, or they'll ask too many questions and then that just shuts you down. So I shut down very easily during this time of the year. Social environments make me I get more anxiety during this time of the year. So I don't go to a lot of functions during Christmas time. So you can see people kind of tapering off and disappearing during the winter months. And you see that that's a sure sign that they may be a little depressed. Yeah.
Okay, so now we understand what it looks like. What is it that we can do to help that individual, or if I am having those symptoms, how can you help me?
Well, I'm being proactive this year. This is the first year I can honestly say I've been proactive because last year was so bad. So I am upping my counseling, and counseling is not always it's not to cure me. She's never going to be able to cure me, but it does give you a safe space to talk about with somebody that understands. So I think people have the wrong idea about counseling. A lot of times we just don't feel like we have a safe space. So she's my safe space, so I'm going every Saturday through January. We've made a commitment that because last year I canceled my appointments and didn't go back till March, which was really bad. So she made a commitment that if I cancel that she's going to make me reschedule, or she's going to start contacting people.
So she's holding you accountable.
Holding me accountable.
So is that what you suggest for people, is to get accountability coach?
Yes, you have to have accountability. So if that is your spouse or your children, I know my youngest daughter holds me accountable. So she'll be like, you need to get up. My best friend, Ken holds me accountable. So, they know when to leave me be, but they also know when I need to get out and get up. So I do that. If I am at home, I will make sure my blinds are open, sun lamp, my salt lamp that stays on 24 hours. I have it in my office space, my bedroom. I do need to get one for the office right now. And I also up my vitamin D. It's very important that you take vitamin D.
Either take it, or is there an outlet?
That's what the sun lamp is for.
Okay.
So if you don't want to take a vitamin D, or if you can't find, like, I know a lot of people are going into that, organic stuff. If you don't want to actually physically take something, you either need to make sure when the sun is out, you go outside and walk, get some sunlight. Sometimes I'll just go and I'll just stand in the sun. Or you need to get a sun lamp, which is, you can find on Amazon the cheapest right now.
Love it. Thanks, Tara.
You're welcome.
We love talking about, if you guys just tuned in, this was Tara Rigsby, who is one of our mental health experts. And with the holiday seasons around the corner, we recognize that mental illness is a challenge. There is symptoms that's pretty consistent, would you say, amongst people who are challenged with depression or anxiety. She stated what it is, some of those characteristics are, but she also recognized some resources that would be good for you to use for your family or friends or those individuals that you know are struggling with the disease. Keep in mind, if you had a skin disorder, you wouldn't just ignore it. You would try to find some good resources and try to find people that could help you heal that. Well, mental illness is not any different, right?
Not at all.
It's nothing that you have to be afraid of. It's nothing you've got to say is a bad thing. In our community, resources, especially in the African American community, is constantly growing. And that's what this conversation is about. So if you know or have a friend or a foe that is interested in learning more about mental health, please tag them. This is how our resource, as well as our community, continues to grow. We're going to be taking a couple of second break, and you're going to watch this clip. And when we return, we're going to have one of our next experts, Lynette David, and she's going to share her story in regards to her illness, managing her illness regarding her son's death. See you in a minute. The Central State Lunatic Asylum for Colored Insane was established in 1868 in Petersburg, Virginia. The asylum was the first facility in the United States established for Black people who were dealing with mental health issues. Before the opening of the facility, Virginia legislators concluded that slaves were immune from the risk of mental illness because they did not own property. It was believed that only white men who were engaged in the stresses of property ownership were vulnerable to mental health issues. There were many Black people who were kept in the asylum for just not following the etiquette of Jim Crow. Many were admitted into the asylum for incidents such as not stepping off of a sidewalk to allow a white man to pass, or getting into an argument with a white boss, or something as simple as talking back to a white train attendant. The records of the state hospital, which contained a treasure trove of African American history, was set to be destroyed. However, a professor who knew the value of the information was able to save the records. Hello, did you guys like that clip? I'm trying to remember which clip that was. Can y'all remind me?
History clip.
Which history clip?
The one.
Oh, okay, when we talked about the hospital, the first African American hospital that was for mental ill patients. Keep in mind, prior to this hospital being created, the option for African Americans was our homes, or jails or penitentiaries, or in a lot of cases, the room, and where they wouldn't know what to do. Yeah, the attic. Yeah, they wouldn't know what to do. Because if something was unique to you, they didn't have the resources. I mean, they was just learning about being a human themselves, right? So I have here with me another fabulous mental health expert, Lynette David. I think she's Minister Lynette David. Is that correct?
I'm Lynette David.
Oh, you're
Yes.
Lynette David? Okay. You just happen to minister sometimes?
Yes, I'm an evangelist. I'm a licensed
See,
evangelist.
I knew I was. Why people try to get small when they come on my show? No, you gotta own that, girl. She is an evangelist. You also are an individual that understands lifestyle and tragedy.
Yes.
I know a little bit, but can you tell them a little bit about the story that you told me about your son?
So I witnessed my 6-year-old son be hit and killed by a young driver who had been drinking and smoking marijuana, and of course it was traumatizing to the 10th degree. So of course it causes a lot of other things to happen when that happens. It breaks psychologically, spiritually, you feel broken. And of course, I'm a woman of faith, so I knew to pray and all that, but I was in a lot of trouble mentally from that. And thank God I had people around me who were able to recognize that. And I did go to counseling. I 110% believe in counseling. So I know that that's kind of taboo in the urban community. Brown people, we don't like to talk about that or go, and we think that it's bad, but it's not. It's actually good to get in a space. And I love what you said earlier. We were just talking about that. Be in a space where it's safe. They're bound by HIPAA. They don't know you or your mom and them. You need a professional, somebody you can talk to that's what they do to help you kind of untangle your thoughts or just be a sounding board, even if you only go once.
Yeah, but we have to recognize, so I think experts, you guys have made a decision. You've made a decision to do this.
Yes.
I think what we have to recognize is a lot of people who aren't experts, and maybe that's why you become an expert, is because you become successful at something, it's hard for people to break that barrier because you've lived with it for 50 plus years in regards to mental health. And now let's say you have a grandchild that's struggling with, and I hear this constantly, which I didn't think we grew up with a lot of it, but maybe it wasn't diagnosed. Autism. Do you hear a lot of children dealing with autism now? And it could just be me. Did you deal with children when we were young that
I don't
had
remember
autism?
I don't remember a lot of autistic children. I know there was a lot of developmentally disabled, MRDD. I know that there was a lot of developmentally disabled, but I would have to say, everybody has their theories, and I'm not a medical professional, but I do have my thoughts of what I believe I've seen. I'm 50, I think I know a teeny bit, so.
Well, that's why we have you here.
Yes, and my personal experience. So, there's not a book that can teach me what I've experienced. I know firsthand the trauma, and like you said, with children, I think that some of the things too that we see now, maybe we dealt with them differently, like you said, or some of these things too, I don't think they were as prevalent. I know that people were saying it just wasn't diagnosed, but I grew up in the inner city, where I grew up, and I was very intimate with my friends. We used to spend the night at people's houses, borrowing sugar and eggs and things like that. So you got to see the raw, real them. And a lot of these issues that we see now, I don't remember seeing all of this. I know that the tolerance and the methods of how we handle our children and the consequences for certain things is a lot different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, if you stood up and disrespected a teacher, you were going to get a paddle, and you got,
some type of consequence.
Yes.
To be disrespectful.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so
many
now
layers now.
they just call it defiance disorder, like they have a problem. Sometimes there could be mental problems, I'm not a psychiatrist, but my observation and just working as a case manager in different jobs, sometimes there is a psychological problem, but sometimes I'm just doing what a 5-year-old does. 5-year-olds color on the wall. You teach them not to,
My girlfriend yesterday, she's a principal at a high school, and she was saying that there's studies now that says that suicide rates, depression, anxiety is at an all-time high for our children.
It is.
And a lot of it is related to social media.
Yes.
So we recognize,
Yes.
She said if she had to give any advice, and this is wonderful for my friend Nita to hear, because she has teenagers. Don't let them have the phone.
That's right.
She said you get them a phone because of contact, get them a flip phone. But what I said is the pressure is not amongst the parents and the child. The pressure is the child, your peer-to-peer. So if all the parents all stood up, like even in the community, our children aren't going to have phones, I think it'll be a little bit easier. But when you're the only parent, yeah, I mean, it's just
That's
difficult.
more pressure.
It's
Culture,
more
because
pressure.
our culture is media and phones and Botox.
Yeah, and they were saying that the girls can't handle it. Unlike their brains just isn't ready for all the impact of the world at that age, and it's really causing some psychological damage. So for those individuals that's looking for a career in the future, I'm sure there's going to be some good psychology jobs available for our millennials. Before we lose focus on what our conversation is about, is we know that you had tragedy with your son. But explain what is it that we can do and what resources are available that can help individuals like you that went through something regarding a child or even something else.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that losing a child is not the natural order of progression. So while we can't measure a person's pain or trauma level of how they deal with it, there are studies that show that that's like the worst in response to how parents respond to that type of thing, because you don't expect to bury your children. So don't compare your situation of grief to someone else's. That's dangerous. Never ever do that, because that's what gets us in trouble. If it takes me 6 months or a year to recover, as long as I'm recovering, it's okay. If I'm okay in a month, that's on the individual. Don't ever compare your grief process to another person's grief process. That's the number one thing. Number two is it's okay to get counseling, a therapist, a professional mental health advocate, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or your family doctor. If you can't get out of bed, if you feel like you want to be asleep every day, if you think about harming yourself or somebody else, and don't listen to the stigma and people telling you that you're crazy. I mean, I always tell people, before you judge me, let's trade places. There was a show years ago they had, it was called Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, or one of them, and if we could really do that, I think people would be more compassionate, because, you don't know what to say.
Because he was a bum on the street, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so you don't want to speak from a place of knowledge if you don't have that experience. So number one, don't compare your grief with someone else's. Number two is, if you're a person that's trying to console, comfort, or help a person that's going through that process, never say things to them like they're in a better place or God knows best. Because again, I say, well, let's trade places, and then you go through it and let me say that to you. And or sometimes it's best to just be quiet and not say anything.
I think that is, somebody told me, the support of just being there.
Yes, just show up, wash the dishes, see if they've eaten, get a journal so somebody can help document things that are going on, make some phone calls for them, watch the children if they have other small children, or maybe babysit for an hour or something so they can be with their spouse, because a lot of spouses have a lot of stress in the relationship if they lose a child. In fact, a lot of them end up in divorce. It's really bad. So
because a lot of times your children is why you're together.
And so if you go through a divorce, and then the blame, just the grief cycle of blame, denial, shame, all these things you go through. So another thing you can do is, after you decide, you have to make a conscious decision though that I'm going to go talk to somebody. So after you've done that, you're not comparing yourself. I would say you have to believe in something bigger than yourself, that you're going to be okay. You got to make a conscious decision, not because you feel emotionally tore up. Because I felt like somebody took me in like a piece of glass and just threw me to the ground, and I was all over the place. And whoever I was before that happened, I'm not that person. So I needed time to heal, but keep in mind that people don't want to hear about it every day, all day. So that's why you have to find something bigger than yourself that you believe in, because when you can't get to the therapist, you can't, go to bed every day, all day. You have to be able to go to that secret place and talk. And I believe it's God. I believe in God. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. So I use that, outside of other things that I had to use as a support system. And then you have to have an accountability person. In the military, it's so awesome. I learned this because I believe in, studying things about the military, but they have something called a battle buddy. And so you could have your armor on, you could be a soldier, you could be dope, you could be all that super strong, but you need somebody else watching your back. Somebody else that holds you accountable. So whoever that person is that's not going to get in the bed and just cry all day with you, they'll cry with them like, okay, suck it up, it's time to get up, let's go wash your face, or whatever. They know you intimately and you feel safe, you know, sharing with them. And then they also know how to make a phone call if they need to call 911. Because you can call Jesus, but sometimes you need to call 911 if that person is in a crisis. Because again, I don't have a description to tell you what losing a child is like. I don't have a point of reference. I don't have anything to tell you, to give you an example of what that was like. All I know is it almost took me out mentally. So now I feel obligated to go back and help other people because I made it out of it. But I made it out because of not comparing, support, and making a conscious decision to have accountability partners and getting the help I need.
Well, you know, just looking at you, you're amazing.
Don't say that.
I'm
Make me
not,
cry.
well, I don't know how not to be authentic about the conversation because I have a child and I can't imagine. So I think every mother, that's sort of the worst thing that could ever happen. And I don't think there are words that people can say. But what you taught me today was there's something I can do. Because I'm the person that stays away. I'll send the envelope, you know, drop off the envelope, then I'm the person that may send the text. I'm a doer, and I'm a fixer. So, and I'm like, well, if I'm not fixing it, what am I doing? But what you're saying is find something in their life to help support. Yes. Not the situation, right, but rather it be their kids, rather it be meals, helping with laundry, domestics. Find a way to just help them. Yes. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
I think that's a golden nugget if you said nothing else. Because most of us just don't know what to do. I appreciate you having the courage to share the story for one and for God to use you.
He gets all the glory. We do the work, but he gets the glory.
Thank God for it. Right?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're going to make me cry, Rita.
I'm sorry. That's what we do here at home again. This is Annette David. She is an advocate for trauma, but you also have an event coming up that we want to make sure they know about.
I do. It's called I Got You Covered, and it was birthed out of this. So I believe that because people covered me and helped me, and counselors and all these wonderful people that helped launch me into my journey, I still hurt sometimes, but at least I always tell them I'm the girl version of King David, so I'm a fighter and a warrior. They helped me get my fight back. But anyway, what we do is we have this event once a year, an annual event called I Got You Covered, and we cover moms and their families who's experienced the loss of a child. So we believe that you should know how to cover people, we believe that you should know how to cover yourself, and we believe that you should know the spiritual component of being covered during the grief process. So what we do is we invite all these moms and their families in and the community. It's a community event, but we call it a charity event. It is not charity. It's not a handout. This is something to bring them a hand up, to help them get up. So we give them some information and resources on the grief process. My brother, my play brother, god brother, whatever you want to call him, who is a psychiatrist, will be there. He'll talk for about 5 minutes, and he'll talk about the psychological and psychiatric piece of grief process and how to do what you need to do to get yourself healthy and on your journey to recovery. Also, Akia Red, who is married to former NBA player Michael Red, who is awesome. She is a mental health advocate who had her own bout, and she has a phenomenal story. She's also the founder of Real Girls Spark. She is our keynote speaker. We also have Charlotte Moore, who is a former pastor's wife, a great woman of faith who has experienced a tremendous amount of loss in a very short period of time. She's going to talk about this. I mean, her son, her husband, she went through a lot of losses in a very short period of time, but the woman is phenomenal.
Who was that?
Charlotte Moore, Lady
Charlotte Moore. I don't think I know her story.
Oh yeah, you gotta get her. She's awesome, but she's going to talk about the spiritual component, why it's important to believe in something bigger than yourself, and how you can get connected to make sure you can build your spirit man up to help you be healthy. And then we also have Lauren Michael, who is the founder of the Black Project. She is thebomb.com. She also is, I believe, one of the marketing directors or something with marketing with the Columbus Urban League Young Professionals. And she's going to come and talk. She is a young person, a millennial, who experienced a loss. She had a miscarriage. And a lot of times we don't scoop that grief and that pain and that depression under the rug, and we keep functioning. especially as women with our lip gloss and all that, but she's going to talk about that and how she had to get help and get things in place to help her untangle her thoughts so she can move forward. So it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be awesome.
When is it again?
This is Saturday, November the 16th at the Hilton Regent Ballroom at Easton. And there is registration required. Registration is required, okay? You're going to have lunch. You're going to get those wonderful speakers. There will be some resources, and we're just going to have a good time. And this is for empowerment and information because we want to build. We don't focus a lot on the losses. We focus on how to move forward.
So I think this would be a great gift for that friend, from that friend that you know may be struggling with the loss of their children. Again, we're trying to find a resource to help
and support.
Get through support, as you taught me today. So this is a great support tool.
It is, and for moms who have experienced the loss of a child, there is no charge. Everyone else, it is $10. And the Hilton, if you've ever been there, they have great food. So you're going to get lunch. You're going to have some chocolate-covered strawberries.
Take care of the moms.
I am, and my moms also get a beautiful plethora of gifts, beautiful gift baskets and stuff that we're going to just gift them. Just sharing with them, because around Thanksgiving it's the high rate of suicide. It does peak. People get more depressed, as already been mentioned, and things like that, because you don't have that person at the table, because you just don't know where to put that. I mean, where do you put that kind of pain, you know? And so I believe that we have an obligation, like Harriet Tubman, and you make it out of anything, you have to go back and get other people, whatever you've made it out of, you got to go back and get the people. You got to be.
You got to what?
You got to go back.
You got to what?
You got to go back.
You got to what?
Get somebody.
You got to go back
and cover the
people. You got to go back.
That need to be covered. You got to go back.
Especially as African Americans, because we got so much work to do.
Obligated. In fact, if you're not doing something of service, you're cheating her. Your rent for being here is service.
Exactly.
You got to sit down
generations in.
If you're not serving in some capacity, I don't care if you're helping people pick leaves out the yard. Whatever your plight in life, whatever your service is, you have to do something to give back to the community to help, and not with a camera on you. It's just out of love and to help cover other people.
Well, that's where the blessing comes in, when it's authentic and you're really doing it.
Yes.
Well, I love everything about you. Tell them again about your handles. I got to get Tara's back.
Okay, everything is on Facebook, Lynette David. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My website is www.lynettedavid.com. And don't forget, if you know a mom or a parent who raised a child who's experienced loss, inbox me, or you can get in touch with Alon Vital Endeavors, and they will definitely follow up to make sure. They partnered and teamed up with us. They will follow up with you and make sure we get you on the right path to help us get this thing going, all right? And get them involved with our movement of love.
Love it. Thank you, honey.
All
All right. You know we're not finished.
Thank you so much.
We have, I told you, a few people that we are speaking with today, and the next person is my friend. But she happens to be a mental expert as well. And she's going to share with us some resources to help you guys who are struggling with depression, addiction, and anxiety. So you're not going to want to miss this. Watch the clip and join us in a few seconds.
This piece that I am going to do is called Don't Hide, Go Seek, and it is a challenge for those who feel like the communities that you come from are being gentrified, to not to hide behind things that you don't know, but do your due diligence and go seek out what is going on in your household, in your neighborhood, in your community, on your job. Do your due diligence and go seek out what's going on. And then also to those who are seeking to go into these other communities and learn or take or do whatever it is, you have a responsibility as well to know the environment that you're moving into. And so, don't hide, go seek is the call to action for everyone who is here. You will no longer deny me the importance of my existence. I am significant. No needed to sit up on an auction block to be exhibited. Sarah Bartman, Caroline Nicole, mutilated body, but see, you miss my soul, Miss Bell Soul. We are the same. Struggle in body, but different last name. Hottentot Venus, video vixen. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Sexuality we reclaim. My nakedness is what you praise. How you get paid, and did we forget? Said America was built off of this. Patriarchal, capitalistic, voyeuristic, simply artistic, the African body turned into a commodity, raped and beaten, stripped of all humanity, no dignity, no diggity, said no doubt they had to bag us up. Animalized, dehumanized, commodified, colonized, criminalized, victimized, illegalized, gentrified, homicide, menticide, suicide, genocide, conquer, divide. Black Holocaust, conquer, divide. Black Holocaust, conquer, divide. Black Holocaust, they made you choose sides like team light skin, team dark skin. They made you choose tie like bleach my skin, bleach her skin. Bounty. They've been hunting for a while now. They made you choose hide like Uncle Tom and Miss Ann. Go seek. Your identity is probably drowning in a creek. Go seek. Your resilience is probably being lynched from a tree. Go seek. Your heart has turned black like the tar. Baby, go seek. Your humanity is being stolen from you like a thief in the night, except this time you are being robbed. Female circumcision so you cannot throb, so you cannot feel. Go seek. Bounty. They've been hunting for a while now, but this time not only is there a price on your life, there was a price on your narrative. Black girl, black boy, I need you to not hide. I need you to go seek. Ready or not, here they come. You can't hide. We see you. You're mind, body, and soul. Ready or not, here they come. You can't hide. We need you, and we'll never let go.
Hello, everyone. Did you guys like that? That's Miss Caroline Bennett, who is not only a friend, but she's become a person that I've learned to admire. She's only 24 years old and loves the arts, as you can see. She's a poet, she's a spoken word, she's a psalmist. She does it all. But what I love about her is she takes her art serious, and she's 24. So one of the things that I look at in millennial artists is not how well they can perform, because all of them perform pretty well.
Right.
It's just something about the front of the camera that they do pretty good. But one of the things that I love about her is she does her work after the camera is off.
Okay.
You know, she's got her master's from the Ohio State University, and she travels around the nation sharing her story. But she becomes an advocate to help the community too.
Okay.
So, you know, she's a nonprofit, just on fire. So I love to talk about a millennial that is going to make a difference in our future, because we're going to need them.
That's always a good thing.
We're going to need them, don't
That's
you
always a
think?
good thing, yes.
Nina! See, I get to embarrass her. She's a little different than the rest. I get to embarrass her. I grew up with Nita. I feel like we grew up together.
Yeah,
we were so
just-
young.
Yeah.
Nita is so calm now. She used to be like a baller when we were in college. I went to college with Nita at Ohio University. We were mob mates. She's not allowed to say much about our time in college, but you've always been a person that cared about just the everyday person.
Yes.
So it's nothing new for me to see you as a mental health expert. It isn't any, not for me. I knew that you were going to be some form of a nonprofit type of person, because one of the things I remember about you is bringing your nephew, your nieces to college, and they was probably what, 6, 5?
Yeah, 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm. And it was so important for you to be an example to them.
Yes.
That's what I saw. And it seems like you haven't stopped.
I've not stopped. And excuse me, you guys, I'm losing my voice, so we'll try to do the best that we can. Got my voice coming and going. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way I was brought up. That's our generation. We were taught to pull someone up with us, and that continues to be a theme in my life today, even in recovery. Yes.
So tell a little bit about your spout during those times. What type of addictions did you have?
Yes, addiction to drugs and alcohol.
For how many years?
Wow, probably 15. And it really took off once I was in college.
Well, but see, that's,
When we were,
are we allowed to talk about that? Are you comfortable
maybe
with
not.
it? Okay.
Maybe not.
So that's why I always ask, because I'm
Okay.
trying to always understand.
Yeah,
the
I
depth
mean, no,
of the conversation.
my life is
Because I don't
an open
remember
book.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of marijuana, I don't remember us any other legs of.
Right. Well, see, addiction is progressive. And so in college is really where it took off, because I didn't have that accountability factor with my mother and, you know, people who raised me.
You were like a mother.
Sort of, kind of, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. But it progressed as the years went on, and I got to a point where I knew that if I wanted to continue to live and to live productively, I had to stop using.
Okay. And how many years have you been clean?
It's been 3 days, 3 weeks, 5 months, 22 years.
Amen.
Hey.
Amen.
Hey, recovery is real.
So can you remember, just for those individuals that still struggle with addiction and find it difficult to get to that first day, how does that work? How do you just get to that first day?
Well, it takes prayer.
Oh.
It takes prayer. And it takes a willingness to do something completely different than you've done in your life. It takes courage, but most of all, prayer. Lots of prayer.
So you got to learn to almost think outside of yourself.
Yes, and
And life will be different for you after that. Is that true?
right, as well as opening yourself up to help, to asking for help. A lot of us are not used to doing that. If you were raised by a single mother, you were probably raised with the mentality that don't take anything from anyone. If you need something, go get it yourself, right? Don't take any handouts. And so when I got to recovery,
Or it's the total other extreme, where they were taught to always ask for everything.
Right. But in my household, it was don't ask for nothing. If you need it, go get it. And that was that. So in going to recovery, it was hard to open up myself and say, Rita, I need help. You know, I'm not doing well today. Can you help me out? Do you
Are
have
you
5
thinking people are
minutes?
judging? If you can
Well,
remember
definitely.
that minute, do you think, is that why you think people are going to judge? Have you hurt that person that you're talking to in the past?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But for the most part, you know, when I got clean and I asked for help, I surrounded myself with people who were willing to help because they were recovering addicts as well. So,
Is it safe to say, because Tara just taught me something, I just thought of something. So let's just say Tara at 15, when she was going through her suicide bout, if after that, because after that she said, I was a little like, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody.
okay.
You're mentally ill. She is. She tells me how
And
to say
addiction
that.
is a mental illness.
And it
Yes.
is. Well, she's not addicted, but let's just say she starts drinking. Because at that point, everybody shut her out. And what she said is, I can't tell nobody because I don't want to be the one looking crazy and embarrassed. And at least if I drink, it justifies me being crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know, people deal with things in different ways. And definitely mental health is kind of like a precursor to addiction. There are a couple others: genetics, environment, lack of coping skills, lack of education. But mental illness is one of the precursors. So, in other words, I've worked with clients who said, you know, Nolita, when I don't smoke weed, I hear the voices even louder than they usually are. But once I smoke the weed, they're not as loud, so I can function. Yeah.
Because that's the mental illness.
That's the
But
mental
you're just
illness.
trying to find a way to get away from it.
Right.
And so, interesting.
Try to find a way to cope.
That's interesting. Well, I think I know one of the sources that I think needs to be talked about, and one of the reasons why I think of you when it pertains to mental health is you're one of the people, Tara also, that said, look, I know I got a problem, but it's just, I'm not going to just keep talking about it. I mean, you know, because at that point, we recognize, and it's almost difficult sometimes to keep going around that person and wants to keep on talking about it. Because she said it, Lynette said it. She was like, nobody wants to keep hearing about it, regardless of how much it was a turmoil for you. So I appreciate that about you. But one of the things that you did was you created processes.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, in working with recovering addicts, I realized that traditional counseling does not work for everyone. So going to an office and sitting down with a counselor and trying to work through problems or decisions that you need to make in your life, it doesn't always happen in an office. So I came up with Recovery Through the Arts. It is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping addicts stay clean through the use of art. So we do arts and crafts. It started out as actually one theater production. So we do plays, theater, drumming. Did I say meditation?
No.
Okay.
No, those are all good because when you think about it, it seems, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, those are theories that's learning to teach your mind to relax.
Yes.
Art teaches us to relax.
It does.
I mean, that's why we enjoy going and watching movies and theater. And
Yes.
what it's doing is it's distracting our mind from everyday life.
Yes, and it teaches us how to voice what we're feeling without having to voice it. So if I can sit down with a crayon or a paintbrush, it will come out on the canvas when it doesn't come out my mouth. So.
And that's so good. That's good. Because remember when they're little, when the kids are little, psychologists will have them draw stuff.
Yes.
And that basically explains what they're thinking. So adults are not any different.
No different.
So for those maybe who don't know how to communicate their thoughts,
Yes.
that's what you're saying is good
Yes.
for. And I like that. So with the expert, just like the child psychologist does the expert look at the art of that individual and start coming up with concepts to be able to get them to start talking?
Not in the type of therapy that I do.
Okay.
I do expressive arts, which is different from art therapy.
Okay.
In expressive art, it's really about the process of making the piece. It's not the end product. It is the emotions that you exhibit during the time when you're working on the piece.
Okay.
And if we can have conversations while we're working, usually it opens up a different part of the brain and a bit different part of the heart that allows people to be a little bit more intimate.
So sometimes I'll laugh. This is a little joke because I saw earlier today where they have now paint and track Is that the music? Is that what that music's called? Trap?
Paint and trap.
Yeah, they had an ad, right? And I was like, ain't paint supposed to be relaxing? They was in there like, jiggling while the paint was on the side. I was like, I think you're going against the odds of what you're supposed to be, art is supposed to be about. So they're going to be leaving there a little more pumped up. I love it.
Yeah, and the other thing about expressive arts is that if you give a 40-year-old recovering alcoholic a crayon or a colored pencil and watch them sit down and start coloring when they haven't in years, it's one of the most beautiful things that I have witnessed.
Well, honestly, my mother-in-law colors to this day.
Okay.
She colors and does puzzles, just a way to relax.
Yeah.
It does work. I think we got to get back. I think electronics, even the TV when we were growing up, replaced a lot of those mechanisms that we had naturally as children.
Yes.
Even one of the things that you have right here. Talk a little bit about that.
So this is, these are actually a couple of the examples, excuse me you guys, that I have from projects that we do in group. So if you guys remember the old school game jacks, you know, you threw them out, you picked them up, and that was one of the games that we played. So clients usually work on, they paint the outside of the box, they decorate it however they want, and this one says God-centered, and then you open it up, and it says, but I jack for Jesus. So inside are the jacks, and
so they have purpose.
They have purpose, and it's really about creating another mechanism to cope. Because what happens is people get clean, and they're used to the hurry up, fast money lifestyle of addiction. So you get clean, you start working, you start meetings, you start doing service work, and you go home and you think, is this all that life is about? You know.
That's when you realize that.
That's when you realize you have to find something that brings you joy.
That's it.
You have to have something to engage in. And
Well,
so
we
art
can
is-
talk
is
about
it.
that for people who aren't mentally ill.
Yes.
Especially as we age, it's what keeps us motivated.
Yeah.
You know, you're empty nesters, you did the children thing, you know, but you still have life to live. And I think that is sort of what we're talking about. If you are over 50 or close to 50 and you know there's something that you're pretty good at, this is a good time to reach back and bring somebody else up to join into the conversation so that you can constantly evolve.
And we've all been given a talent.
We all have been given talent,
We just
or we
have to
wouldn't
find
be here.
it. We just have to
And as
find
black people, it's buried a lot of times.
Yes.
We have to be honest because we wasn't given the accolades. Him and I talk about this all the time. He's like, why weren't you always doing this? I was like, black people from Wall Street didn't get opportunities like that. I mean, you know, we was up in there. Laura was our person.
Right.
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not Laura. I would never be able to do stuff like that. So it's just a matter of us understanding who God made us to be
Yes.
and having the confidence and the courage to let Him use us. I love it, Rita. Thank you. Could you please share your handles?
My handles, I am www.recoverythroughthearts.com. And you can find me on Facebook as well as Nita B.
Nita B. That's what
Nita
she's
B.
always been known as. Before we end, we only have like a minute or so left. I wanted Tara to come back over, and we didn't give her information. And I wanted her to spend, can she replace with you? I wanted her to spend a couple of minutes. Tara and I have been talking for a couple of years about mental health. She's one of the individuals that made me really see through the eyes of a I think I'm normal. Let me see the checklist. I might be in the spectrum. But anyway, she made me realize what mental health was, as well as teaching me that every day people are dealing with it and how they are successful.
Yes.
That's the part they don't ever tell me about.
Yes, so there is a recovery.
There's a recovery. And there's people out there like you killing the game.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us a little bit about your vision of the show that you want to have that addresses this.
My vision is to have an open conversation about different topics of dealing with mental health. So one of my main topics that I want to talk about is mental health and being in a relationship, because it's very difficult for the person in the relationship with the person with mental illness.
Oh, is Ken gonna be the face of the movement?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Poor Ken.
That might be a bad idea.
We love you, Ken.
But that's a really big topic that I want to talk about.
That's huge. You didn't tell me that one.
Yes.
You threw that one on.
I threw that
me.
one on you.
That was good. Well, that maybe was in your research. You said you was about to do
I
some
was doing
research.
research, yes.
Okay, what else you got?
And I hold women's retreats. So I do work with women to give them a safe space to talk and to get healing. We do workshops. So I'm
It's for a full weekend.
It's for a full weekend.
And you have it
one day. I have it 2 times a year usually in April and then in September. So I'm
the April class full?
Yes.
So the April class is full, but you could probably learn more about the September class.
Yes, you can learn more on my website. It's www.butterflybloomtr.com. I'm also on Instagram, butterflybloom1. So you can find me there as well and get information on my Instagram. So I'm a certified life coach, and I do take everything that I do, pride is my ministry. So.
And look forward to Tara being one of our new shows for Home Again TV during the year 2020. We're excited about that. You have a lot to share.
I do.
Good stuff, girl. All right, you guys heard it from all of the horses' mouths today. You got a what's the right word? Plethora. Whatever, I bet y'all can't spell it. Y'all got lots of information today from some wonderful experts, and we needed to hear this. We got new resources for the African American community, and you even got in some history, so we know why it is we got to have this conversation today. I am your homegirl, Rita Fuller-Yates, and we are here with this conversation with all our experts, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.